before I go ahead and start doing the real video and everything and giving my opinion of faith-based movies and God's Not Dead 2, I want to clarify my position on religion and Christianity. So I was raised in a Christian household. My parents are Christians. Family goes to church. My parents actually lead a group that talks about mental illness at a church, at the Hills Church of Christ. They are kind of not ministers, but I guess group leaders. They started it. Grandparents Catholic, other grandparents Baptist. I live in Texas, a lot of religious friends, a lot of people that I know that are super Christian. I used to be a part of a church band. I used to be in a church youth group. I used to be in a church drama group too. I was really involved. And now where do I stand? I don't know. My philosophy is we're all human. We're all equal. If you are doing something that is hurting someone physically or mentally, I'm not down for that. If you're trying to force your beliefs onto other people, not down for that. Sharing is cool, but force, not okay. So that's just a little brief understanding of where I'm coming from when I give you this. I see a lot of faith-based movies. Saw Do You Believe last year. Saw Miracles from Heaven last week. I saw The Young Messiah a couple weeks ago. I saw Risen. I did a review on that. And if you remember, with Risen, I actually gave it a 5.5 out of 10, which technically on Rotten Tomatoes would not be fresh, but pretty close. And it's over 5, which means that I didn't think it was a bad movie. I just thought it was pretty boring and bland. I can say that about a lot of faith-based movies. But this review video is going to be specifically talking about God's Not Dead 2. I'm going to give you a little history about my interpretation of God's Not Dead 1, what I thought of it, how I think 2 is superior or worse, what do I think about it, and what do I think about faith-based movies as a whole, and why I don't think they ever really succeed. They do at the box office, but not critically. So, let's start with God's Not Dead 1, a little review and history with me and my interpretation and stuff of it. So, I saw God's Not Dead 1 in theaters with about 5 people in the theater, including me. And if you don't know what God's Not Dead is, it was a 2014 faith movie about this boy who goes to a college. He's the kid, he's from Good Luck Charlie. I don't remember his name, Shane something. And he is at college, and he's signing up for a philosophy class. And he takes Kevin Sorbo, the Hercules from the Hercules series in the 90s, philosophy class, and he's an atheist professor. Now, Josh is a Christian. Atheist professor is telling everybody they have to agree that God is dead. They're just agreeing. They're supposed to sign a paper that says it. He stands up for what he believes in. Good on him. He's like, no, God's not dead. I'm going to prove this. So the whole movie is about him trying to prove that God exists. And there are a bunch of other subplots that are happening at the same time. There's this Asian kid named Martin who is from China, I believe. His dad is super against him learning about Christianity because I don't remember what religion they were, or something to do with the culture, I'm assuming. There's a lady who is a journalist who is very anti-faith and atheist who interviews people like the Robertsons from Duck Dynasty who show up for a little bit. They're awful actors, by the way. And they interviewed the band Newsboys, who are a Christian rock band. And they're okay. Lead singer is probably the best out of them, in my opinion. But she interviews them, asks them why they're Christians, because she's struggling with cancer and is looking for outlets, basically. And it's like, why does everybody have God and I don't have God? And there's Dean Cain is in it. There's a lot of subplots in that movie, like 6 or 7. Muslim girl that's actually a Christian gets kicked out by her dad because she's a Christian. And there's a pastor with an African guy who's going to be a pastor, and they're going to go to Disney World, but the car keeps breaking down, and so they keep not being able to go, but the African dude's like, God has a plan for us, and this is... If you don't understand what I'm saying, this movie, it was very convoluted. There were way too many things happening at the same time. They should have had, like, 3 subplots. I would have chosen A, obviously the main one about Josh and his professor. B, I would have done something involving the pastor, because he was actually Josh's pastor. Everything connects in this movie, so I would have kept the pastor one, maybe tweaked it a little bit, and probably the journalist, just to have an atheist perspective of someone that's finding God. I would have gotten rid of the Asian one and the Muslim one, but that's beside the point. The movie was very convoluted and actually ends with the atheist professor dying. They like kill him, basically God's wrath, I guess. They didn't handle it very well. I don't think it was. Is one of the worst movies that I've ever seen. I gave it like a 1 out of 10, which I don't ever give zeros. I would have given it like a 0.5 or a 0, but 1 out of 10. So, it culminates in a Newsboys concert. Everyone goes to this Newsboys concert and is like, yeah, and then the screen tells you, and Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty tells you to text all of your friends that God is not dead. Literally shows up on the screen of the Newsboys concert. It's like, hey guys, I'm Willie Robertson. I want y'all to text everybody in your phone so that you can go and tell them God's not dead because you believe. And I know that kid Shane, Josh, whatever your name is out there, who proved that God is existing because he proves an atheist professor, y'all. So, like, text him and everybody, God's not dead. End of movie. Then it tells you to text your friends. I got too many texts from people out here in Texas saying God's not dead. I'm pretty sure I received 5 one day. They were all like a bunch of high schoolers though, so that doesn't have anything to do with anything. So, bad writing, bad direction, really bad acting, boring soundtrack, boring, convoluted plot. God's Not Dead 1. Now, on to God's Not Dead 2. Pure Flix Entertainment, the group that made God's Not Dead, pretty much got everybody from the first movie, crew-wise, to come back. Like, same composer, same director, same writers. Pretty sure I saw same cinematographer. I was looking all this up before. So it's essentially all of the same people, and then most of the same cast. They have the pastor, the African dude, they have the Asian guy, they have the reporter, they got the newsboys, they have a different Robertson who's actually acting in this movie, but the main plot of this actually doesn't follow the main kid from God's Not Dead 1. So God's Not Dead 2 follows this girl who is an atheist, and that was something that I was like, oh, that's interesting. They're going to start off with the main plot being about an atheist, sort of. And her brother died. She's an atheist. Her teacher, played by Melissa Joan Hart, she's a history teacher who is a Christian, and she's having this rough time. And so she ends up talking to Melissa Joan Hart. Melissa Joan Hart's like, oh, you'll get through it. I believe in you. How do you get through it, teacher? She's like, I have Jesus. I'm a Christian. Pays no attention to it. It's just like, whatever. Salvation Army comes to pick up her brother's stuff. What does her brother have that she didn't know about? A Bible. So she's intrigued based on, I didn't know my brother was a Christian, and, oh, my teacher said something about Jesus, I'm going to read. So she reads all this annotated Bible her brother left, and wow, she's a Christian. She's found God magically through this. Cool, good for her. She found something that she really likes. So in class, she asks a question about Jesus, comparing him to Martin Luther King as a historical figure, saying, hey, Martin Luther King has some of the same teachings. Love your enemy as, do unto others as you would have them do to you, that kind of stuff, right? And Melissa Joan Hart says yes. So the movie follows this court case because Melissa Joan Hart is being sued by the American Civil Liberties Union because she brought up religion in school and was essentially preaching. And that's what the main plot of the movie is this court case with her and her lawyer, and I believe, is it Ray Wise plays her lawyer? Not her lawyer, the opposing lawyer. And that's the main plot. Now, there are some returning faces, like I said, from God's Not Dead. And we have Martin, the Asian kid, who's back, whose plot makes no sense if you haven't seen the first one. Because it's this kid, he's learning all about God, he has all these questions for his pastor. Makes sense at the beginning. He's like, hey, I'm coming to ask you all these questions, Pastor Dave, the pastor from the first one. And he's like, oh yeah, why are you coming to ask me? And he's like, Josh. Remember, Josh is the kid from God's Not Dead 1, is not in this movie. So if you haven't seen the first one, already you're like, who is this kid Josh? And he's just like, oh, if I see Josh later, I'll tell him, thanks for sending you my way. He asks him the questions. His plot eventually goes into this thing where his dad shows up in his dorm room and is like, I'm taking you home because you a Christian now and I ain't down for that. Doesn't make any sense. Like, why would his dad fly all the way to America, where he is going to school, and just randomly go, "You're coming home." I feel like he would have called him or something before. That's a lot of money. And he seemed like a rich dude in the first one because he was in a limo, but it still doesn't make any sense. And then, after a random collection of scenes of Martin doing stuff, he decides he's going to be a pastor, and that's how his storyline resolves. It should not have been in the movie. If you didn't see the first one, which I'm assuming if you saw the first one, you're going to see the second one, shouldn't have been in there. Now, the other subplot involves the reporter from the first one who had cancer and was interviewing newsboys and stuff. Starts off with her calling going to the hospital, finding out that she no longer has cancer. Her cancer's in remission. And she calls the newsboys who were back in this movie. And I'm like, oh, they have a nice little cameo here. More on them later. She calls them and is like, yo, I don't have cancer. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. God has a plan for you. You're going to be godly. And so she decides that she's going to start trying to find her faith. Very nice. You got the whole atheist thing a lot in this movie of people finding God, which is a nice change of just godly people finding God in Christian movies. You also have the Melissa Joan Hart thing is happening at the same time, and with the jury, there's Pastor Dave, the pastor from the first one who was answering Martin's questions. Like I said, everything connects in this one. His subplot involves the African dude coming back from Africa. I don't know why. He's just like, yeah, I'm going to come back and be in here now. I'm going to get a doctorate. And he's just like, cool, you're back. And there's this whole thing where during the court case, he has to turn in all of his sermons from the past 3 months to the court because there was a subpoena dropped at their church, I guess, or all churches. I don't really know. They don't explain it very well. And he decides not to do that. He gives them a letter and was like, I'm not going to give you all this. And they're like, well, we're going to pursue legal action. Do they pursue legal action? No, they don't. I also would like to point out that if you see this movie, they say 3 months. How many days is 3 months? Oh, approximately 90 days. But then when they go to the subpoena office and he's like, I'm not going to give you all my sermons. That way you can tell me what I can and cannot preach. He's like, you got to give me 120 days. That's 4 months. It's math. So then he gets sick, appendicitis, gonna have to probably remove his appendix, and he's on the jury, so he falls down, and then this new juror has to come up. If you notice the same thing as God's Not Dead 1, you're probably like, Samuel, when is this plot going to end? I have no idea, because there's so much happening. It's very convoluted. With this movie, they should have stuck to the Melissa Joan Hart storyline about a teacher who's standing up for what she believes in. Similar to the first one, I actually think this plot was a lot stronger than the first one. There were some interesting character moments with Melissa Joan Hart specifically. So let's go ahead and segue into what I'd really like to talk about, and that is why faith-based dramas don't work usually on a movie stage. Like, they work to serve their audience, why they end up being like long sermons essentially, and they affirm for people that want to see it that, yeah, Christianity is cool. Let's start with characters. Characters in faith-based dramas typically follow a couple specific tropes. There's the goody Christian that is the main person. That's supposed to be Melissa Joan Hart in this. Now, what is interesting about her is that she has having a lot of emotional problems because the fact that she just thinks that she's doing what's right. She's struggling with the fact that my friends that are teachers are saying that, like, I'm this big Christian that's trying to convert people, while at the same time, I'm just trying to be a good person. There's some nice moments of her just, like, looking off into the distance, talking to herself, or thinking to herself, or walking up steps just nervous because she doesn't know how the case is going to go. And that was nice. Her lawyer, Jesse Metcalf, I want to say is his name. Something along those lines. He's very good. He's probably the best actor in this movie, or has the best performance. He's an atheist as well, so he's coming from it from a logical standpoint. Something I wish that the movie writers would have done, like coming at it from a logical versus just like, oh, we're awesome because we love Jesus. And his name is Jesse Metcalf. Yeah, I was right. So there are some nice moments with them. With everyone else, it's a lot of cliches, or they just follow the character tropes, like I was saying, as the bad atheist. In these movies, typically the bad guy is an atheist. So there's like Ray Wise, who's the American Civil Liberties Union lawyer, and he hates Christians, and he hates what they stand for, and he's gonna destroy them. That's his entire character. He's only there to be an opposing force, so that at the end you're like, yeah, we showed him. Same as the first movie with Kevin Sorbo. He was only there to be, yeah, we showed him that God exists, and then Kevin Sorbo died. In this one, he loses a trial. I'm going to go ahead and literally get in depth with this movie, so if you didn't know that they were going to win the trial, like they usually would, because it's everything in this movie is predictable, then sorry. It's a lot of cliches, like I said. The characters of Martin, the Asian kid, is literally just there to be like, you know what, I'm diverse, I'm Asian, and my dad hates Christianity, so I'm gonna be a pastor and go back to China. Or the main girl, who's like, you know what, I'm gonna stand up for what I believe in. They only do one thing, and sometimes they're a little two-dimensional characters instead of the one dimension. The main girl that, I think her name's Brianna something, Collie in the movie, she struggles with the fact that, oh, I got her in trouble, and that's nice. I wish they would have expanded on that more and taken away from the other subplots. The pastor, he doesn't really he gets sick, but he doesn't do much. He's just there to answer questions and be like, yep, she just needs faith. So we've talked about characters. How's the direction? Well, the direction of this movie follows the same as God's Not Dead 2, in that they go for these big sweeping visuals and then really grounded, like, nice moments, juxtaposed to show the way that I like to think of it is they're trying to show the greatness of God and what He has created and allowed to be created with the simple human emotion that we experience. I think that's what they're trying to go for. At least I may be wrong. It just doesn't work. You got these big visuals of like landscapes and giant courthouses and big buildings and fields and trees, and it looks so pretty, but it does nothing for the story. It's just there to look pretty. And at the end of this movie, like I said when I said I was going to get to the Newsboys, I'm going to get to that right now. They end on a Newsboys concert. Just like God's Not Dead. I went into this movie really hoping that they wouldn't do that. I was like, please, give me something different. But, unfortunately, they did. They ended with everything culminating in this Newsboys concert where it becomes a concert film, and then they end up telling you to text everyone you know that God's not dead, he's surely alive, and they play that Like a Lion song, the "My God's not dead, he's surely alive, and he's living on the inside, roaring like a lion." That song. Singing. They ended on that just like they did in the first one. It was very predictable. I figured it was going to happen. It did. So the direction isn't very good. The characters aren't very developed. They all serve like one purpose except for maybe the main storyline, which had some nice moments. But the writing. Let's go back to the writing. Some of the dialogue in this is terrible. I'm not sure if all of it was necessarily written. There are parts in the law scenes where people are giving these detailed explanations about how they believe that Jesus existed, or what they found in their findings, in their search for, like, their quest to find if Jesus existed, to prove that he was real on a historical point. There are some times where I was just convinced that they just had someone monologuing, exactly, like, wow, this person really just knows their stuff. They didn't even need to write it. And I was like, oh, cool. That was nice. Some historians and this cold case homicide investigator dude that kind of looks like James Cameron to me. It was really weird. They come in and they give detailed accounts about how they have managed to prove that Jesus existed historically. Not as a religious figure, just as a person that existed. Doesn't mean that he was resurrected, but they believe that he existed. It was nice. It was nice to get that historical element versus a complete faith-based thing, which is what a lot of people do in faith-based movies. Miracles from Heaven completely just relied on a testimony, on faith. That's what Heaven is for Real did, but those are based on true stories, so I can see where they're coming from. But then other movies, it's all about just what they believe, not what they have found in research, and that was a nice juxtaposition. I wish they would have had a little more on that. The law scenes are definitely the most intriguing. Like I said, Melissa Joan Hart and Jesse Metcalfe, two best parts of the movie, and it's good to see their chemistry. They had some really nice chemistry. Seeing Jesse Metcalfe as a lawyer, I actually would sometimes like, yeah, I can get behind this dude. I really want him to succeed, which is great. But the other parts of the movie just really bog it down so that you don't. The writing in this movie is just awful. Literally, some of the dialogue, like, I bet they did not mean any ill intent, and the way it's delivered. The reporter lady's lines, sometimes the way that she says them, awful. Everything about the writing, mostly, maybe like 85 to 90% of the writing is just terrible. Oh, even more than that, 90 to 95%. But then you get that 5 to 10%. It's just like, wow, that's better than I anticipated. Not great, better than I was expecting. And the soundtrack to this movie, it's similar to the direction. It goes for these nice grounded moments sometimes, and then big and sweeping. It obviously has to follow the direction. It's the composition and the soundtrack. The composer, Will Musser, back from the first one. It sounds just like the first one. There's not really much to say there. Cinematography, same as a lot of this stuff obviously follows the direction. But like I said earlier, it's the same people from the first one, and they haven't learned anything. They're doing basically the exact same stuff that they were in the first one. They're going for too many plots. They're going for not enough character development. They're going for big, sweeping, grandiose stuff when they should be going and striving for excellence. I think and I know this is never going to happen. I want a faith-based drama similar to what, with the logical standpoint from the law scenes. I want something that's grounded in that, maybe even written by an atheist, someone that's not looking at it. There's a line that Jesse Metcalfe says when he is has been appointed as Melissa Joan Hart's lawyer. She's like, "Are you a believer?" And he says, "No," and that's good. Why is it good? And Jesse Metcalfe's character Tom, his response is, because I'm not blinded to procedure like you are. Because Miss Melissa Joan Hart believes so much in just faith and believing that she doesn't understand the procedure and how it needs to work. And that's what the big problem with faith-based movies are. Is they're an hour and a half to 2 hour long sermons where they should be about what's the word I'm looking for? About promoting they're promoting the faith, but it's only to the faith-based crowd. They're essentially reaffirming everything that if you're going to walk into this movie thinking, man, like, I am going to walk out of this loving Jesus even more than I love now. If you're an atheist and you're going to walk into this movie going like, I wonder if this movie is going to change and make me feel like a Christian or feel some sort of hope for humanity or something, you're going to be let down, because this movie exists to serve the faith-based audience. It's for religious zealots, people that love Jesus. That's all that most of these movies are there for, is to please a crowd of people, because they make a lot of money opening weekend, they make some money the second weekend, and they can get more. PureFlix probably going to make like a God's Not Dead 3 now. I remember when they announced God's Not Dead 2, and I was like, why? Why do you need to do this? And then 2 years later, here we are. So faith-based movies exist solely to please a religious crowd. If you are like me and you don't know, you're going to come out of this movie and you're just going to feel the exact same way. Maybe you're going to be a little pissed off because of how bad the movie was. Right now, this movie has, I believe, a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 21 out of 100 score on Metacritic. The first one, I don't know what it has on Rotten Tomatoes, but it has a 16 on Metacritic. This movie's definitely better than the first one. I'll give it that. They definitely upped with the writing. But everything else, no one learned. And that's what really sucks, is that I always hope that a movie's going to be good. I go in with the expectations I have. I went in with very low expectations based on the first one. And it met my expectations and was actually a little better than I anticipated, because I could see Jesse Metcalfe's Tom character getting a spin-off of some kind, and I'd be like, I could see myself maybe getting into it. But unfortunately, like most faith-based dramas, this movie just fails to deliver on the acting, directing, most of the writing, the score, the cinematography, production. It fails to deliver. And it ends up becoming a 2-hour-long commercial for why you should be a Christian. So, I have to give God's Not Dead 2 a fitting 2 out of 10. It's not as bad as the first one, which I would give a 1 to a 0.5 out of 10, but it's definitely still a terrible, terrible movie. And I'm so sorry that you're going to have this on your record, Jesse Metcalfe, because I think you did a great job as your character, but hey, not all movies can be winners, John Tucker. Oh well. So, what do you think about this movie? Do you think that it's good? Are you a Christian and you think that this movie was the best movie ever? Are you Christian and you think that it was terrible and really didn't do you justice and you and your religion justice? Literally, let's just talk. I'll enjoy having conversations. Thank you to those that comment or subscribe, that do all the liking, like most people say at the end of the video, like, comment, all that stuff. Thank you for doing that. It really means a lot. I know that we haven't put out a video in about 3 weeks. Ethan went to South by Southwest. I got really busy with school and work stuff, but rest assured, next week we are going to be doing the monthly meltdown for March, where we get to talk about all of the past movies of the month, get to talk about some news. I wonder what the news is going to be, and getting to talk about our top comic book movies in honor of Batman v Superman. So, my name is Samuel. Treat yourself right and see a movie, just not this one.